Well, let's get straight to some new developments from Oakland City University. Former employees filed a formal complaint to the Higher Learning Commission yesterday, and OCU's president has now come out with his side of the story.
14 News reporter Emma Beck joins us now with the latest from Dr. Dempsey. Emma?
Well, in the complaint filed yesterday, employees wrote to many violations, like the university failing to pay employees, using a award notice to avoid obligations to faculty, and a failure to conduct required program reviews. Well, today, Dr. Dempsey responded to each of these allegations. He goes into detail on the university's financial issues and why they can't pay staff, saying the Board of Trustees voted to continue operations last school year, even though the university faced a $5 million shortfall. That shortfall is because they lost the state DOC contract in 2021 and were also not able to sell their carbon capture patent. He admitted even after some remediation, right now they still owe $1.2 million in payroll and $1.8 million in accounts payable. He also admits to raising his voice during a staff meeting, acting hostile towards employees. Dr. Dempsey says he did not fail to conduct required program reviews or hire unqualified faculty, which were other complaints voiced in the formal letter. Now, Dr. Dempsey responded to each violation brought up in the complaint. You can read that full statement and his response on 14news.com. Dr. Dempsey has not responded to our multiple interview requests.